All right. Hi. Hi, Ashley Newberg.
Hi.
I'm Chantelle Neufeld, and today I'm interviewing Ashley. Ashley and I met on a call. Well, we both joined like this year-long mentorship program with Dana Martin, the unschooling guru genius,
Mhm.
because and like getting to know Ashley, we have very similar values of like kindness and respect and freedom. And so I just thought, well, why don't we interview each other? So here we are, Ashley.
Yeah. Thanks for doing this with me.
Oh, yeah, anytime. So I'd like to start off with talking about your parenting philosophy. Basically, I don't know, tell me a little story about how you got into it or how you sort of developed your own philosophy that I guess maybe different than your parents or was
Yeah.
was uniquely your own.
So very basically, going back a few years, I just had become a mother to two, had my second baby, and I got really, really depressed. And I just went into this really deep depression where I couldn't even take care of my kids. I was like not functioning well. And my husband was being allowed to work from home because of that, so he could help me out. And a condition of him working from home was me going to therapy. And at first, I was like, I don't need therapy. Like, I just need practical help, right? I need help with my kids. I need help with my house. But once I got into therapy, I, for the first time, heard that my feelings made sense, that the depression that I was feeling, it all made sense. And this wasn't something that I heard a lot of in my life. I heard a lot of my feelings don't make sense. Who I am doesn't make sense. The way that I'm being doesn't make sense. And I ended up going through about a year long, really intense counseling journey where it brought up all this stuff from my childhood that I had no idea was there. And I thought I had a very normal childhood, which I think for my community and the time that I grew up in, it was a very normal childhood. And come to find out, there was all this stuff that was like still impacting me. And I really dug into that and healed a lot of my trauma, like worked through all that like deep, icky stuff. It was a very like dark, scary period of time bringing all of that up. But I was also so excited to finally have this sort of explanation for why I was feeling the way that I was. And coming out of that, I just had this even bigger than I normally did passion for parenting and for being a mom and for talking about trauma and childhood and how childhood impacts us for the rest of our lives and how we become who we are by the way that our parents treat us and by the way that we as parents treat our kids. And I, went through all of these different parenting, labels like gentle parenting, conscious parenting, peaceful parenting. And ultimately, what I've come up with is um, relationship based parenting, is what the term that I use, because that's what all of these things have in common that they come back to is the relationship that we have with our kids. And I believe that everything that they need to learn, everything that they need in order to be successful and thrive and grow comes from this relationship that we have with them, starting, from even before they're born, all of that good attachment stuff, just like being together and living life together and growing and learning together and being human together. And it's such a relief from some of the ways that I used to think about parenting with this dynamic of like, I'm the adult and I'm in charge and I know better than you. And it's so freeing now to just be able to be in relationship with my kids and recognize like we both have feelings, we both have needs, and we can work together to uh, figure out, this flow of life and living together and making sure needs are getting met and solving problems together. And it just, it feels so good. And I'm really happier than I ever have been in my life. And so that's basically
That's
my
beautiful.
parenting philosophies. And yeah.
Yeah, well, I think it does all stem from relationships because like when you think about if you're in rapport with someone just in general, they're gonna, take what you say and really consider it. But if you're not in rapport with somebody and they don't, necessarily know, like, or trust you, they're not gonna, take your advice or whatever. So how would we expect our kids to take our advice if we're not treating them with respect and kindness? And I just love that we can look for like the win-win and validate our kids' feelings because, like you said, with your therapy journey, having your feelings validated like that was just so
Huge.
freeing. Yeah. Like it's okay to have feelings.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That was kind of the opposite of the message I got through
Yeah.
my whole childhood was like feelings are too much, feelings are bad, you need to hide those, you get in trouble for having feelings. So I think
Hmm.
very freeing.
And I used to think that like being human was, we're supposed to try to be happy all the time, but I really think that we're just supposed to feel like all the things,
Yeah.
not just one, like not just one thing. And once we can feel all of the things, it leads to like a deeper sense of joy or happiness than just a fake happiness
Yeah, it really
or
does.
a distracting sort of thing.
Uh-huh. Like leaving space for all the feelings to come out like brings that sense of contentment and peace and just like true joy.
Hmm. Well, I mean, isn't that what we're all searching for? Is that acceptance? And I don't think that starts at a certain age. Like that doesn't start at like age 25 or whenever the experts have decided that people are, their brains are fully developed. Like we want that acceptance right away.
Mhm. Yeah, it
And
feels
yeah,
good
like
to
all
be
behavior is trying to
accepted.
meet a need, and it's usually that need of acceptance. And different behaviors come out. But yeah, once that need is met, I find that the behaviors are, you know?
Yeah, behavior is always communicating something deeper, always
Mhm,
communicating, there's a need here, there's a feeling that needs to be expressed, there's maybe even like a skill that needs to be learned. It's that
mhm,
surface level of communication that's very visible to us. And that's one of the things that a lot of parents get caught up in is we can see all of these behaviors and we want to fix them, we want to do something about it, we want to change the behavior. And if you just focus on changing the behavior, then you don't address what is going on underneath that's actually causing that. It's like
mhm,
putting a band-aid on things where it's just
mhm.
going to come out in other ways or it's going to get suppressed until a later date and then you'll have to deal with it then. And it really is, I find that it things go so much smoother when we address the need in the first place and
Mhm.
meet our kids there instead of just trying to like put band-aids over everything by changing what the behavior looks like.
Yep, exactly. No, there's a lot to be said about, the journey and feeling our feelings, and I feel that parents learn so much from parenting. I am still learning every day.
Yeah.
And it's cool to be able to, be vulnerable with the kids and, within reason and just say when we're having our big feelings so that they learn sort of by example of how to deal with feelings.
Hmm.
How have you found that?
Yeah, that modeling who we want them to be and is huge, because kids don't just do what we tell them to do. They
Rarely do they do that.
yeah, they
More is
match.
caught than taught.
Uh-huh. They do what we do. They very naturally like I was just noticing yesterday my 8-year-old, the way she was talking to somebody, I was like, that's how I talk to people. And it's just very like automatic. They become so much of who we are. And if we want to instill all of these values or the things that will help them and make them successful in life, and give them the same joy in their life. Like, we have to be willing to do the work to heal ourselves and change ourselves and deal with all those things that come up for us that are really uncomfortable or really triggering or really hard, so that we can become the people that we want them to ultimately look up to and become, and so that they can feel permission to be who they want to be as much as we're being who we want to be.
Very well said. Yes. I don't know, it just brings up so many different ideas in my head to talk about. I'm just trying to pick one now. I
There's
guess
so much.
I was thinking about mostly how I still learn from example more than like a course or something. You know what I mean? Like when I see people like yourself, when I see people like Dana living their lives, sharing things of their personal life. I love the stuff that you share on stories and the stuff that you post. It's just like, I don't know, it really feels like warm, and it feels like, oh yeah, there's a human doing human things and it's okay for me to be human too, sort of a idea. How
I
how has that been for you? Like, have you learned from other people by example too, or?
Yeah, I really am super like visual and hands-on in learning. And so I can hear something, but until I make it relevant to my life, until I see it being done, it doesn't always make sense yet. And so I
Mhm.
do learn so much from watching other people, especially people who are ahead of me, who are even more, peaceful and whole, and just really connected with their kids. I love to see that because it feels like it gives me permission to be more me. And it gives me permission to like connect more with my kids. And that's one of the things that I try to do too, is I want to be somebody that when they see me, they feel permission for themselves to be who they want to be and to connect with their kids, to pursue what they're passionate about, to live in a way that's not just totally directed by what somebody else thinks or who they're expected to be or what someone else tells them they have to do.
Mhm. Yes, it reminds me of my childhood and my mom. A lot of the things that she would want us to do was because so and so would think this, or, you
Mhm.
know, you got to wear this when you go out because what would they think of me? Right? So,
Yeah.
and I mean, I've done that myself, right? Like, you don't want the kids dressing themselves every day. I mean, it's something to get used to if we weren't raised like that. If we were raised to be like, you only post pictures of a cleaned up house, not a dirty house. Of course,
Uh-huh.
everyone with kids has a dirty house.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Those are those things that just get passed on from generation to generation. That, if it was normal for your parents, it's going to be normal for you, and it's going to be normal for your kids until you like intentionally decide to do something different. And even then, there's subconscious things that come up that get passed down, and it's not doesn't need to be this like big blamey thing of like, oh, our parents were horrible and they did all of these horrible things to us. I feel like there's so much room for understanding and grace in like our parents were just as human as we are, and they were doing what they knew and what they felt like was best at that time. And now, even in this generation, we have so much more ease of access to information. We can connect with people who are outside of, the people that we see every day. We can read all of these books and like learn from other people's examples. We can literally see video of other people's lives. And that's not something that a lot of generations before us had. And so they did what their parents did, or they did what their doctors told them to do, or what their friends were doing. And now we have so much more information, and there's been so much more studies done on childhood, and we understand so much more about development in childhood and how our interactions with our kids shape them. And I think it's really cool to come to this place where we can recognize we didn't always know something. Now we've learned, and we can change and we can do something different. And there doesn't need to be any shame in who we've been in the past or who generations in the past have been, because we're all kind of on this symbiotic journey together of constantly learning and growing and becoming more connected and more together and more understanding of how we relate to each other.
That's beautiful. And that's the direction that we're going in. You know, we want the world to experience that too.
Yeah,
What you were saying reminded me of victim mentality that so many of us used to be in before therapy, and how therapy really did help us see that our parents were human, and really show us that compassion for them is really helping us out. It's not like so many people think, oh, forgiveness, right? Like it's such a big word, has so many different meanings for people. But to me, forgiveness is about compassion and about letting go of, like, that it could have been different, or just let it, cutting those cords, just being like, that was their life and this is my life. And yeah, just not giving all of our energy into that victim mode, and really becoming empowered by that.
yeah. And
Letting
it,
our energy go to where what we want instead of fighting, resisting the old story.
yeah, that's true. If you put so much energy into focusing on the negative things and what you're not doing and what you're against, then there
Hmm.
isn't as much room for like, what do you want and what are the positive things that come out of that?
Hmm.
And I
Hmm.
think I've told people before, when you're going through healing through your childhood, I feel like there's inevitably a point in time where you need to allow yourself to be kind of angry at your parents. When you're bringing up all of that hurt that maybe you haven't allowed yourself to feel before, be hurt, let it come out in a way that maybe you have not done before. And I think a lot of people get stuck there in that anger and in that hurt. And if they don't truly like give themselves the love and attention that they need, or don't like get it from the people around them, then it is easy to get stuck in that victim mentality where you're constantly waiting for somebody to come give you all the things that you need that you never got.
Hmm.
And it's a hard balance between, yes, maybe you should have gotten that and you didn't, or maybe this bad thing happened that should have never happened. And at the same time, you're the one who is living your life. And there's a responsibility there that if you want something different and you want to heal and you want something better, then you have to do that hard, icky, uncomfortable, scary work to get yourself out of that so you can really create a life that you love. And there's so much room for like holding space, both for my parents really loved me and they were doing what they did out of that love. And there's these ways that it was harmful to me and
Hmm.
ways that I'm still dealing with the impacts of that.
Hmm. Yeah. I Yeah, just thinking about like our inner child, and it just wants to be heard. Like there's just parts of us that just want to be heard and witnessed, and when that can be expressed some way, it doesn't always have to be expressed in an unhealthy way. Like journaling helps so many people through their therapy journey too, and art. You have beautiful art. I'm sure that some subconscious healing has taken place with your art, and I feel like the more we can express ourselves, and even like boundaries is a huge thing, right? Like learning to, when you feel that anger bubbling up inside of you, not to push it down and be quiet, but to, you know, to express anger when it's fitting.
Yeah. And recognizing like, is what is this feeling that's coming up trying to tell me? Is it trying to
Hmm.
tell me that there's something out of alignment, or there's like a boundary that's being crossed, or something that I'm
Hmm.
uncomfortable with?
Hmm.
Or is it something that I'm making up in my head or being reactive to. There's so many different ways that those feelings can come up in us, and we need to pay attention to them. And just like with our kids, recognize like, what is this behavior, what is this feeling, what is this that's coming out of me trying to communicate to me, and what do I need because of that.
Hmm. So, like stepping into the observer role with your own feelings and stepping into the observer role of your kids' feelings versus just living on the surface and reacting to triggers and not realizing that the triggers are really the way, they're the path of growth. When we go there and feel those feelings and resolve those unresolved things, or just process stuff that we didn't have the tools to process when we were younger, um, then we can heal ourselves and have the tools to help our kids process things too.
Yeah. And it really takes like being willing to be curious
Mm,
instead of judging and defensive.
mm-hmm.
We can automatically be so judgmental of our feelings or our kids' feelings, or evaluating what we think it means versus just getting curious about it, exploring, paying attention to what's going on here, and not in a judgy way, but in a very open and curious way, because that's how we're going to learn about ourselves and learn about our kids and learn about what we all need. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
And did you find that your year of therapy was really that journey of your inner voice shifting from a judgmental voice of perhaps your parents, or you know
Mhm.
to a more curious and caring inner voice?
Yeah, that was really huge and interesting. Going through therapy, I realized how much the voice that was talking to me in my head was not mine. It was
Mm.
like all of the things that everybody else had told me my whole life.
That you just
And
accepted because you didn't
yeah,
know.
and all the things that I, held on to, because there's those things that when they hurt, you hold on to them. And so you just repeat them to yourselves all the time in your head. And going through healing and bringing out my inner child and that part of me that I was kind of suppressing, I found my own voice. I found like, oh, this is what I want. This is what I think. This is what I have to say. And it really is a process of like kind of shifting that over from this is what everybody else is telling me versus this is what I'm telling myself.
Hmm. It's very empowering. And
Mm-hmm.
like when you feel so passionate about something because it was so life changing, you can't help but want to share it with the world. So, how did
Yeah,
that begin for you? Was that on your year of therapy journey, or was it after? Or tell me about how you got started with sharing what you learned with the world. And
yeah. So coming out of that, I was really excited. I wanted to tell everybody about it. Like, there's this thing, you can heal yourself. You can change the way you parent your kids. And shortly after I went through that intense counseling period, I discovered parent coaching as a
mm,
job. And I had never heard of it before, but I was reading about it and I was like, that sounds like exactly what I want to do. And so I went through a parenting coaching certification course. And that was just perfect timing coming out of all of that therapy, where I was rediscovering myself and who I am and in relation to my kids and my family. And that was, I think it was a 6 month long program. And so coming out of there, I started coaching people, and yeah, just really wanted to bring everything that I had learned and all of the healing and freedom that I felt to other people. And that's when I started my own business. And since then, I have just been on my own growth journey, growing through myself and through my parenting, and sharing that with other people and helping them on their parenting journey to get more connected with their kids and less stress, and breaking down all of those things that people are doing to make life harder for themselves, to make their parenting harder than it really needs to be, and coming back to just this effortless way of parenting and being with their kids.
And so what did you name your business?
Like to love parenting.
Tell me about that name. What does it mean to you?
Yeah, it was kind of like a double meaning where part of it is going from like to love in parenting. You're going from uh, maybe like a I like my kids to I love my kids, or even the other way around. I love my kids to I like my kids, and also just I like that I love parenting. It's fun to love being a parent and enjoying parenthood. So that's kind of the meaning that I came up with there.
That's beautiful. So tell me about like starting the business and like some of your first clients. Like how did that feel to share what you had learned with other people and to see the results that that brought about in their lives?
Yeah, it was really cool. Once I started coaching people, I realized how much sort of a natural gifting I had in coaching. And it was this is part of me that I had never really explored before, and just sort of letting that out to play, that
Mhm.
coaching side of me. I really, really found that I have enjoyed it so much. I love, talking with people and working through what's coming up for them, and asking them those questions to like dig down into what's going on here, and getting underneath that surface level, of the behavior and what's coming out, to why is this happening? How is this linked to your childhood? How is this linked to your fears of the future? And kind of bringing that all together to who do you want to be right now? What kind of parent do you want to be? And just drawing that out of people. And I love it so much.
That's so great. So what do you feel makes a good coach? Or like just thinking about the people that you've hired in your life to help you, therapist or coach.
Hmm.
What differentiates the the best from the rest?
I think what I've found in like the coaches that I've had is they just bring sort of an element of safety, where they create this space where it's safe to be vulnerable, and it's safe to express feelings, and it's safe to be in progress, and not really be 100% sure about things, but just to be able to experiment with trying on different ways of being. And that's what I've really loved in the coaches that I have clicked best with, is just that element of a safe place to do scary things and to be vulnerable and to grow.
Wonderful. So tell me a little bit about the your journey through deciding your kids' education, how your kids would learn. How did you come across what you are currently doing?
So my husband and I were both homeschooled. He was homeschooled his whole life, and I was for about half the time. And uh, we really enjoyed being home and doing that. And so it was kind of something we always knew we wanted to do too. We couldn't really picture, sending our kids off every day where we wouldn't see them all day, and like, 'cause we like our kids and we want to be around them, and we know that they feel more secure when they're with us too. And I don't even remember how we found out about unschooling, but we just naturally sort of evolved into this radical unschooling lifestyle where we follow our kids' lead. We believe that they're very natural learners. They love to learn. And if we just get out of their way and let them learn the way that they want to and
Mhm.
pursue the things that they're interested in, then they're going to get everything that they need for the life that they're going to live. And so
Mhm.
often we try to get them to like fit into these molds of like, this is where you have to be, this is the level you have to measure up to, these are the things that you have to learn. And it creates an environment where you kind of end up suppressing all of that natural desire to learn and to be curious and to be interested in things and to be passionate about something. Because when you take all of that away, all of that pressure and all the expectations, it's just really cool to see how they very naturally tend towards things that are interesting to them, that they're interested in,
Mhm.
and they want to learn more about those things, and they want to grow, and they want to understand. They're just so deeply curious,
Yeah,
and
like they dive into their own unit study, right?
yeah, and it's really inspiring for me because it's opened up for me a lot of the ways I've closed myself off to learning, and just watching the way that they naturally develop. Like, I'm inspired to follow those things that I'm curious about and that
Hmm.
interest me. And I've been, opened up to all of these things that, oh, I want to learn more about that, or I want to learn how to paint. I want to, get better at this thing. Currently, I am experimenting with learning how to dance. That's a
Oh, same.
thing that I've always been interested in, but never really done. And so it's just fun to be in this environment where we're all just like deeply curious
Curious.
about things and want to
Yeah.
play with different stuff and experiment.
It's the best way to learn is play. And
Yeah.
that's the best way to remember things too. In a unit study type of an idea, like where you're cooking and you're learning fractions at the, by accident, right? Like you're, and
Yeah.
it sticks then because you have sort of a picture in your head of, okay, you know.
Yeah. It's like we were talking about, learning from the example of other people. Like, if things aren't relevant to our life and we can't make it, make sense in our worldview or in what's relevant to us, then it's just so easy to forget it because it
Hmm.
doesn't really matter. But
Hmm.
if it's just normal everyday life stuff that we need to know for living, then we learn it because it's relevant, and it doesn't have to be this thing where we're like spending hours tediously like studying something.
It reminds me of that show, Are You Smarter Than a Fifth Grader? Did you ever watch that show?
Yeah.
Like all these adults, right? They've graduated and everything, but they don't remember the things that they've learned.
Hmm.
I mean, they remember some of the stuff, and usually it's when it's connected to something else or when their teacher has had a good relationship with them, and it's because the teacher was excited about it, they were excited about it,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah. I majored in psychology in college, and I've learned so much more about people and how we operate and how we work, and about trauma from my own experience, like going through counseling, like reading all of this stuff about how the brain works and how we develop. I've learned so much more about that from my own life experience and from talking with other people and from reading books like than I
That
ever
you were interested
did in
in, that
college.
was
Yeah.
relevant to you. Yeah. So how was your educating your kids? How's it different than when you were homeschooled? Like what's the difference?
I think when my mom started homeschooling us, at first she did the whole, trying to make it like a classroom where we had our desk spaces, and we had our school schedule, and we had a hall pass and all of these things. And that very quickly went out the window because it didn't work at home.
I think a lot of parents are learning that now during COVID
Uh-huh.
if they're trying homeschooling, because yeah.
Yeah. And one of the things that I love about what my mom did with us was we did a lot of field trips, as she called them. And we would go out and do things. And I really specifically remember we would go to Garden of the Gods, which is like place near where I live in Colorado. And they have these big rock formations. And we went there and we took sketch pads and we just drew the rocks. And I remember just really enjoying doing stuff like that. And I took some of the dirt and used it to paint the sketch that I drew. And that's the kind of stuff that I really enjoyed about the way that I was homeschooled. And it was just, when I was a little bit older, I think like sixth or seventh grade is when we started. Um, but I just loved that freedom to learn from the world and explore the world. And um, we didn't necessarily learn like how to write a paper or things like that. But then I went to college and I took a English class and I learned how to write a paper there. So it was fine.
Yeah. No, I can relate because I was homeschooled too. And I was pretty much unschooled for my high school years and then went to go take my GED and there was a paper required to write and they said we could pick a topic and write a paper and like I passed with flying colors. So it's like
That's great.
and Dana's kids too, never spent a day in school and never had like um I don't know, structured learning at home, but they can still pass all their stuff they want to pass and do all the things that adults do
Hmm.
and learn to read in their own time and yeah.
Yeah, and there's so many things I've learned now as an adult that I see kids who are like more traditionally schooled are kind of forced to like learn all of this stuff at such a young age. But now when it's relevant to my life, it comes so quickly. It doesn't
Mm,
take a long time to learn it. It doesn't take a lot of like effort. It just is very easy.
hmm I think the teach a man to fish concept is one of the best concepts for unschooling because that's what we're teaching our kids to do is teaching them how to learn when they're curious about something. And that goes to their adulthood too, where so many adults that I see seem to be, like they can't learn unless they have a course or something. Like
Yeah,
you can learn. We have the whole internet now. Can learn whatever
yeah.
we want.
You can find anything on YouTube.
Yeah, yeah. So is there anything else that you'd like to add about your business or about what you're passionate about? What comes to mind?
What comes to mind is I really love being with people. I
Mm,
love you know, just like teaching in a group setting and doing group workshop. I don't like to just talk at people. And one of my favorite things is it's just getting people together and talking really deep about, what's going on in our lives. What do we want to work on? What do we want to change? I'm very much a self development junkie,
mm,
and I get really excited about doing things like shadow work, inner child work, and talking about our trauma and all of these things. And so
mhm,
one of my favorite things to do is um, getting groups of people together, whether in person or virtually. I really prefer in person because I like being with people. um, but just gathering people together to really talk about ourselves and do life together in a way that is very healing and growing and exploratory. And so that's one of the things that I enjoy doing
mhm.
as a parenting coach.
Awesome. So is there any like story that comes to mind, maybe something that happened recently with your kids that kind of sums up your parenting philosophy or your school way of schooling that you've chosen?
Mm, I think sometimes what I when I see it a lot is when I'm seeing other parents where there's kind of that contrast where I recognize how much ease I have in my life with my kids, where there's not all this like micromanaging of everybody. There's so much space for everyone to be who they are and just express whatever they want to express. And there's not me trying to control everything that everybody does. And
Mm,
I see that when I'm contrasted with somebody who's doing things differently, or where you can like feel the stress of a parent who is trying to manage all of these things.
mhm,
And on the other side of all of this complexity of learning about yourself and learning about how your kids work, there is so much ease because you just
mhm,
really get back to the basics of being together. And it's
mhm,
been so cool watching my kids just naturally develop and just blossom in this environment where it's safe to be who they are and express what they want to express. And
mm,
there's there's challenges and there's conflicts and there's big feelings, and underneath all of that, there's still so much peace and contentment because
Mm,
you're together.
because it's allowed.
Yeah, we
I
work every.
found, yeah, before my therapy journey, I was not so much a controlling parent, but I was trying to control the feelings so that everyone was happy, happy, happy all the time.
Uh-huh.
And that didn't work. And so, yeah, it's much better. And also, I was trying to, I didn't know if it was subconscious. I didn't realize I was doing it, but I kind of went from having that codependent relationship with my parents, where I would make sure they're happy, to doing that with my kids, making sure they're happy, but at the expense of me. Like
Mhm.
my needs didn't matter. And so learning about like the win-win, right? So that we can all of our needs matter, right? So that the kids realize that the parents' needs matter too, and they're just more aware of needs in general when we can sort of live out loud and allow for the big feelings from
Uh-huh.
us and them. And yeah, that does take working through our stuff, working through our triggers and traumas, to view life in that perspective and to be able to parent with that effortless peace that you're talking about, that
Yeah.
so much of us want.
Uh-huh. And that's
Yeah.
so much like my philosophy of like relationship-based parenting is like
Mm,
if the kids have needs and the adults have needs. Everybody who is involved has different needs, different feelings, different triggers, and are in different places developmentally. And we get to create those relationships where we figure out how to like flow together and all of that.
it's beautiful, simply beautiful. All right, so I think we've come to the end, unless there's anything else you'd like to add.
I don't
Um,
know. Thank you
okay.
for asking me lots of questions and talking with
You're
me.
welcome. I love having intuitive conversations with people. It's awesome to meet someone who kind of speaks the same language and has the same
Yeah.
values and can sort of, you don't need to interpret what you're saying.
Mhm.
So thank you so much.
Yeah.
And yeah, we will see you next week at the the coaching call.
Right.
Have
You,
a wonderful day.
you too.